Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about the Detroit Lions versus Atlanta Falcons Week 3 matchup based on analytics. Each week I collect all the current 2017 NFL team data in order to analyze and project potential NFL performance. And we are only 2 weeks into the season, so it's not the biggest sample size ever. However, there will always be little nuggets of truth in every sample of data you see. It's just a matter if what happened in the last 2 weeks keeps happening for the rest of the year, or if what happened in the first 2 weeks continues to happen for the rest of the year. That's a lot of what this data is. It's not really going to be 100% predictive or project or something that you would really want to project things on until you get a large enough sample size. But I do think it's interesting to see how these things develop as the season goes on, and as the season goes on, we get more information and better information and bigger samples of information. As a result, things get better and better and better in terms of pinpointing, what the team weaknesses and strengths are, etc. And if you are new to this channel, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So if you're not familiar with any of the things that I'm talking about in today's show, just go to the description, and all the information will be there for the most part in terms of what I'm talking about for the most part. So starting with this matchup, when it comes to the basics just is the basic NFL stat information. We're talking about the defense's ability to prevent first downs, the offense's ability to create first downs, turnover percentage, sack percentage, offensive score percentage, how often does the offense score on each drive, all those types of things. So over the last 2 weeks, the team that is favored in this matchup going into this game is the Detroit Lions. It's only been 2 weeks worth of data. I do think that some of this is because they just kind of got a little, I wouldn't say lucky, but they performed fairly well. They took on the Arizona Cardinals, who are turning out to not be who we thought they were, and then of course the team that they faced last week in the New York Giants are one of the worst teams in the NFL right now, especially when it comes to the issues they're having on offense and not defense 100%, but offense definitely. So some of this is skewed because of the Lions playing a fairly soft schedule to begin the year. However, it doesn't take away from how they performed. So this is how these teams stack up when it comes to overall data. So starting with the Detroit Lions versus Falcons. When it comes to defense, the Detroit Lions defense has been playing a lot better when it comes to preventing first downs on defense compared to how the Falcons have been performing, whereas the Falcons offense has been able to create more first downs compared to what the Lions have been able to do overall. And when you combine the total D score and the total O score, it favors the Lions because of how much better the Lions defense is playing compared to the Falcons defense. But again, it's only 2 weeks worth of data, but that is just how things stack up in the last 2 weeks. When it comes to turnover percentage, they're pretty much the same. Both these teams, the Lions and the Falcons, have just not turned the football over a lot in the last 2 weeks. Sack percentage is a big difference, though. The Lions have been one of the better teams in the NFL in terms of preventing sacks, while the Falcons have been one of the worst teams in the NFL in terms of allowing sacks. So that is definitely something to keep track of because of the issues that the Falcons have had in terms of sack percentage. Then when you look at offensive score percentage, the Falcons are favored here. Basically, the Falcons score more on offense. Every offensive drive leads to a score on the Falcons compared to the Lions when it comes to their percentages. So basically, the Falcons are just better when it comes to putting points on the board on each drive, whereas defensively speaking, the Lions have been better when it comes to preventing scores from happening on defense. And again, some of this is because of the weak schedule that they played up to this point, but they still have performed very well as a defense nevertheless. Whereas the Falcons have been one of the worst in the NFL when it comes to preventing scores on defense. So you can kind of see a pattern here. You have one team that has played relatively decent offensively and relatively decent defensively in terms of preventing points, and another team that's able to put points on the football onto the the Falcons have been able to put points on the board, but their defense has just not been playing as well as they need to in terms of preventing points from being put up on the board. On top of that, the Lions, in terms of turnovers, have been much better in terms of creating turnovers on defense compared to the Falcons, who have been one of the worst in the NFL in terms of creating turnovers on defense. Sack percentage is favored on the Falcons side. So you have that sort of situation to kind of monitor and look at. And the Lions have just not been the best in terms of creating sacks overall, for whatever reason, the last 2 weeks. They have been able to get some, they have been able to, do their thing, but not as well as you'd like. Interceptions are favored on the Lions compared to the Falcons, who just have not been able to get that many turnovers in terms of interception overall. When we get to special teams, the Lions, in terms of kick returns, are much better compared to the Falcons in terms of punt return. Punt return, but punt return situations, the Lions are favored over the Falcons. Kick returns is pretty much even. Defensively, the Lions have been very good in terms of preventing punt return yardage compared to the rest of the NFL, whereas the Falcons have been one of the worst in the NFL in terms of preventing punt return yardage. And kick return yardage on defense, they've been kind of even. Field goal percentage is pretty much the same. It's so early that it's pretty much the same. Extra point percentage is pretty much the same. Punting average, though, is favored on the Falcons, where the Lions have pretty much the worst, one of the worst punting averages in the NFL. So overall, based on the basic information, based on what's happened in the last 2 weeks, or what's happened in the last 2 weeks, the Lions are just slightly favored over the Falcons, mainly because their offense has been able to put up points, and their defense has been able to prevent points a lot better than the Falcons, who have been kind of the opposite. The Falcons have been able to put up points, but they haven't been able to prevent points from happening. And that is basically what it boils down to as to why the Lions are favored in this game based on what's happened in the last 2 weeks. When we get to the other sort of matchups when it comes to completion percentage, so this is basically the Detroit Lions offense completion percentage compared to the Atlanta Falcons defense in terms of completion percentage. The Falcons have advantages when it comes to first down situations, but the Lions have advantages when it comes to second down situations and third down situations. So the Lions are slightly favored in terms of these particular metrics. When we look at the Falcons offense versus the Detroit Lions defense, the Lions defense is actually favored when it comes to first down completion percentage, whereas the Falcons are favored when it comes to second down completion percentage and third down completion percentage. So for the most part, the Atlanta Falcons offense and the Detroit Lions offense will have advantages when it comes to getting completions and on both sides of the football. And then when we get to rushing situations, so this is basically the ability for these offenses to create first downs with the run. The Falcons defense is actually better in terms of first down situations compared to the Lions. However, the Lions offense is better when it comes to second down situations and substantially better when it comes to third down situations. So don't be surprised if the Lions maybe try to mix things up and rush the football a little bit more than they usually do because of how poorly the Falcons' rush defense has played in the last 2 weeks. And then when we get to the Falcons rushing offense versus the Lions rushing defense, the Falcons are actually favored when it comes to first down situations, not so much when it comes to second down situations, and slightly above the Lions when it comes to second down situations. This is going to be kind of an interesting matchup to see. Again, the Lions have played a relatively, I'm not going to say easy, but a lot of this could be because of the teams that they face and because they put these teams in situations where they had to pass the football and abandon the run. But for the most part, it favors the Falcons, not as much as you'd like, but it does favor the Falcons slightly in this particular matchup when it comes to rushing offense. So we'll see how this develops. But for the most part, the Falcons do have a slight advantage when it comes to their rushing offense, but not by as much. And when it comes to second down situations, that's kind of the scariest sort of aspect of this matchup. Now we get to passing situations, so the ability to create first downs with the pass. When it comes to the Lions versus the Falcons, the Lions are slightly, the Falcons defense is actually slightly favored when it comes to first down situations, second down situations, but the Lions have it when it comes to third down situations. So this is going to be something to watch. The Falcons defense has not exactly been the best when it comes to completion percentage, but they have been pretty darn good in terms of preventing first downs with the pass over the last 2 weeks. So that's definitely something to kind of praise the Falcons. They've been bend but don't break. They haven't broke a lot, but that's at least been their style of play. And then when we get to the Falcons offense versus the Detroit Lions defense in terms of passing, the Detroit Lions have an advantage when it comes to first down situations, but they don't have an advantage when it comes to second down situations and third down situations. So the Falcons are favored when it comes to their ability to create first downs with the pass on second downs and third downs. And this is basically, how that situation kind of turns out overall when you look at the game. So ultimately, how do I think this game will turn out? I think, if you look at the individual matchup, I think the biggest thing that kind of hurts this game to me is the fact that the Falcons will not have Vic Beasley. Vic Beasley is going to be out for a pretty substantial amount of time. And as a result, when your top pass rusher is out, it kind of messes a lot of stuff up. So we'll see if they can recover from this. But ultimately, I kind of side with the Falcons, despite the fact of how well the Lions have played in the last 2 weeks. I still think that the Falcons, I still think that the Lions are, I'm not going to say they're not legit, but I do think that this is going to be a very big test game for them because this is the first sort of real team that they're playing. They're not playing a team in the Giants that are just one of the worst teams in the NFL, nor are they playing the Arizona Cardinals, who proved that they're almost one of the worst teams in the NFL. They almost lost to the Colts, who were by far one of the worst teams in the NFL. So that just that should put you into perspective in terms of the Giants' schedule up to this point. So I kind of prefer the Falcons in this game. However, I don't want to count the Lions out. They have performed very well despite the poor competition, and I don't think you should just ignore how well they're playing up to this point. So I have to give them praise for how they played in the last 2 weeks. I personally think that the Falcons will win this game, but data prefers the Lions. So, of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.